Welcome to the Life with Joey Calvo Podcast. I am Joey Calvo. We are streaming live on YouTube right now, as well as filming for PhillyCAM TV, and also coming soon to WPPM-LP radio in Philadelphia. So before we get started, I do want to announce that starting in May, the first 5 episodes of the podcast that have been taped will be. Excuse me a minute. There we go. Will be aired on PhillyCAM TV starting in May. I don't have an exact date yet. More dates to follow. April 21st, I will be doing a live podcast like I normally do here, but I will be doing it from the PhillyCAM studios. So you will get to see the studio, and which actually uses this platform, which is great. So it took a whole lot off of me, but it was very fun to learn the other day. So more details to follow. It's going to look interesting. It may look weird because it's going to be totally different from what you see here in reference to it. But believe me, folks, you're going to love it. So we have Albert Lanier. He is a former freelance reviewer. And today we're going to talk about Carol Wayne. Carol Wayne was an actress back in the 60s and 70s. And she was very famous for doing skits as the matinee lady on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. And she was a lot of fun to watch. And, of course, Johnny being the king of late night at the time, which really set out what late night comedy really was back in the 60s, 70s, early 80s until he retired in 94.
93, I think, was the last Tonight Show.
Yeah.
So it was May of 93, I think, was his last Tonight Show. So I think it was 93.
93, 94. But he was very funny. I grew up watching him. But like I said, today we're talking about Carol Wayne. She, like I said, she was an actress. She was always on The Tonight Show. Very funny. Was found dead in 1985 in Mexico. So Albert has done some research about her. So we're going to talk about her now. But before we get to that, Albert, we're going to have you review yourself. To those who...
So renew and review myself. Yeah, that's a new one. I haven't heard that. Yeah. I've been interviewed for 15 years. I never had anybody talk about renewing or reviewing myself.
Well, the only reason why I say that the only reason why I'm saying it is now we're on PhillyCAM TV. And so those that didn't see the first episode, which will be in May with you, just tell everybody in a couple minutes who you are and how you got to be where you're at.
All right. That's fair enough. My name is, of course, is Albert Lanier, as people can see right over here. And I was a print journalist writing for magazines and newspapers in about 3 states, in California and Washington State and in Hawaii, which is where I'm originally from. I was a print journalist in those 3 states and a freelance writer and journalist for 22 years, from about the 1990s till 1994 till about 2016. I retired in 2017. I've been a writer in general for 31 years. This August will be 32 years. As a writer currently, I write 2 film newsletters. The first is Final Cut, which has a variety of essays and articles, some analytical film essays, some general film essays, and some more personal film essays, especially some that I wrote about being a film reviewer, which I was for about 8 years, from 2002 to 2010. I covered film festivals and did interviews, wrote coverage, and wrote film reviews, obviously. And So I was a journalist and a freelance writer, and now I returned to writing about film. I have my film newsletter, Final Cut, as I mentioned, if I didn't mention that already. And I also have another one, which is next month. We'll have its 1-year anniversary, called Retro Review, which is a review newsletter. It reviews movies from the past, movies that are forgotten, somewhat unknown, completely unknown. I deal with movies from years past. Although I'm supposed to be on sabbatical from both of those newsletters, I did do a couple of articles recently. I did a couple reviews. I reviewed a movie called Under the Silver Moon, which came out in 2008. I'm sorry, 2018.
Okay.
Fascinating movie. I also wrote an essay on Final Cut about Under the Silver Moon called Code of Silence recently. And of course, the last review I did was a movie called Hero, which starred Dustin Hoffman, Andy Garcia, and Gina Davis from 1992. So I write those two newsletters, Final Cut and Retro Review, which you can find on Substack. And so I guess currently I would say that I'm a film analyst and a writer in general.
Okay. All right. So, like I said, today we're talking about Carol Wayne, who is an actress and comedian back in the 60s, 70s. Like I said, very famous on the Tonight Show with Johnny Carson, playing the matinee lady, but she did other little skits in between that. And so you did some research about her. So I'm going to leave the floor to you in reference to this and in explaining more about it than what I know. Like I said, you know, I grew up watching, I watched her on.
Well, I will say that this was requested by you, because we had a chat off the air, and you got very interested in the fact that I wrote an article. So basically, as I had mentioned previously, I write Final Cut and I write Retro Review, those newsletters. I had written an article in May of last year, meaning specifically May 31st, 2025, about Carol Wayne. And it was entitled The Suspicious Case of Carol Wayne, and it can be found at Final Cut, my newsletter, if you want to take a look at it. I also do a podcast, a couple podcasts. One, of course, is Final Cut, the podcast, which is a promotional vehicle for my newsletter. I make no bones about that. That's the reason that I got into podcasting. It's basically to promote my newsletter. I also do another podcast called The Write-Off, which is about writing, but that's very different. Now, I had also done a podcast episode. It's episode 16 of the Final Cut podcast. And episode 16 of the Final Cut podcast is entitled The Suspicious Case of Carol Wayne, much like the title of the article. So people can check that out as well. They can go to Substack or Spotify to check out that podcast episode. So why did I write my article, The Suspicious Case of Carol Wayne, in May of 2025? And of course, do podcast episode on my podcast, Final Cut. Well, I had just done an article on a guy called Gary DeVore. Gary DeVore was a screenwriter who died under suspicious circumstances. And interestingly enough, while I was writing this article, and of course I mentioned that I wrote it, if I didn't mention it, I wrote this for Final Cut. It was unusual in that Final Cut is a film newsletter. It's not a true crime newsletter. I'm not a true crime writer. So I had seen the documentary about this guy DeVore, and it was interesting. And that's why I wrote the article. While I was writing the article, I thought about Carol Wayne, and I realized that I knew that she had a very suspicious death. Her death was extremely suspicious. And that was the only thing I was aware of, when I had come across it or I heard about it.
Right.
I, of course, knew about Carol Wayne. And so I thought, you know what? I'll do an article on Carol Wayne. And the reason I did it was, number one, I had actually reviewed Carol Wayne's last film on Final Cut. It's also an episode on my Final Cut podcast. It's the movie Heartbreaker. starring Peter Coyote and Nick Mancuso. And that was her last, I believe it was her last film.
Mm-hmm.
And the sad thing was she might have had if that had actually worked in her favor, it might have opened up a different lane in her acting career. Mm-hmm. But alas, we'll never know, because she died in January of 1985 under very suspicious circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
So the reason that I primarily wrote about Carol Wayne was because I had written this article about Gary DeVore, and I had already reviewed Heartbreaker, the movie Heartbreaker, which she was in.
Mm-hmm.
And that was why she did it. And I was aware that it was suspicious death. And so I, of course, did my research, looked into it, and I wrote The Suspicious Case of Carol Wayne in May of 2025. Before I move on, I'm curious, would you consider yourself a Carol Wayne fan, or like a...
I will say, well, in reference to Carson, yes. I enjoyed her being the matinee lady, and that voice that she had, because
her high voice,
because it was so interesting, and then Carson would come up with something else to make it funny, but she was very funny in her own way in those skits. So I can say yes, I was a Carol Wayne fan.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, you were, like I said, the reason I'm on here talking about Carol Wayne in my article is because you did request it. So it was very clear to me that you were interested in Carol. Yeah. And I'm sure a lot of people were interested in Carol when she was alive, for reasons I will not go into.
We're introducing Philadelphia to Carol Wayne to those that don't know who Carol Wayne is.
Right. So, in fact, speaking of introducing Carol Wayne to Philadelphia or anyone else, Carol Wayne herself was introduced into the world, I believe, in the early 40s. It was 1942. She was born in Chicago, and she had what I would describe a fairly disciplined childhood. She and her sister Nina, they're put in ballet lessons when they were very young, and she got into ice skating and figure skating from a very young age. In fact, from what I recall, reading about in the course of researching my article, Carol had to get up very early in the morning. I've read 5 a.m., but she had to get up, go to ice skating or skating lessons in the morning, then go to school, and then go back to skate. And then go home, and I guess repeat that over and over again. So she was involved in figure skating and ice skating from a very young age. In fact, she dropped out of high school because she was recruited by the Ice Capades to tour with them. And so it was like a 40 plus city tour that she went on. I guess it was the beginning of what probably would have been a professional ice skating and figure skating career. Unfortunately, in one of those cities, she ended up taking a spill and cut open her knee. Ooh. And that eventually that was the downfall. It led to the end of her career, basically, as an ice skater, as a figure skater, because which is kind of it's interesting because it's an interesting look, when you talk about people's lives and the forces that shape it, like any individual. That probably was a force that shaped their life, because, in fact, it wasn't probably a force that shaped her life. It was a force, because she was clearly training to get into this career as an ice skater and a figure skater, and that was suddenly gone. She had dropped out of high school, so she didn't have a basic education. And what she did was make the first in what I call a couple transitions career-wise in her life. She ended up going to Las Vegas, and becoming a showgirl.
Okay.
I believe she worked, I think, with her sister, Nina.
Okay.
They were at the Tropicana, I believe. I think it was, I may have noted this in my article, but I think it was the Folies Bergère show, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay.
But that was the first transition. She went and became a showgirl in Vegas.
Okay.
And there were times when she went into LA. And the story goes that someone at a party said to her, well, you know, I don't recall the exact words, but basically it was like, you know, they were trying to get her to do a screen test for either TV or movies. And she ended up doing the screen test, and I guess it went over well enough. And what she did was she ended up making the second transition in her life, career transition,
right,
which was from showgirl to actress.
Okay.
And so what was interesting was this. I wrote my article, The Suspicious Case of Carol Wayne, in May of last year.
Okay.
And in the course of the research, I didn't really focus on her entire career. You know, I was aware of her career. I looked into various elements of it, but it was rather cursory when I did the article, because the article, of course, is about her death.
Right.
It's not about her life. I'm not writing a biography.
Right.
But it was in preparing for this interview, I went and did some additional research, or, you know, I did a little bit of research, additional research, you know, just to prepare. And I got to see somebody on YouTube had put together a bunch of clips of her on different TV shows. Her, meaning Carol Wayne. I don't know who did it. I don't know the channel, so I can't tell you. All I know is somebody did it. And so yesterday, I took a look at a number of guest star spots she had on shows.
Right.
And here's what I will say about Carol in regards to her career.
Okay.
It was so that people may have a kind of understanding, because it's interesting. Somebody had done a YouTube video saying, well, there isn't a lot about Carol. There's no documentary. There's no book, what have you.
Right.
Which is interesting. But here's what I realized that I wasn't interested in when I did my article on Carol. I realized that basically what Carol was a jobbing actor, what I would call a journeywoman actress.
Okay.
She was doing episodic TV in the 1960s. She was on I Spy. She was on The Man from U.N.C.L.E. She was on Bewitched. She was on I Dream of Jeannie. And I think Love American Style was another. And so she was doing the episodic TV mill, as I would call it.
Yeah.
And what happened, I think, in her career was that she started working with Johnny Carson, I believe, from what I found out was, I guess, the late 60s.
Yeah.
And she started doing the Tea Time Art Fern sketches.
Yeah.
And she was a matinee lady.
Yeah.
And IMDb notes that she made like over 100, meaning Internet Movie Database says she made over 100 appearances. I guess 100 sketches or so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Of the Tea Time lady on The Tonight Show.
Yeah.
I think when you look at her career, what she fundamentally was a journeywoman actress who managed to become a bit famous because she was on The Tonight Show, which was the most watched late night talk show.
That's right.
For many years.
Yeah.
As you can attest to, I can attest to it because I used to watch it myself.
Yeah.
So, but here's the tricky part. This is because, and I state this as a foundation for what's to come in terms of her life. What people have to understand is that fundamentally what she was I would say, character actress of sorts. She played a ton. So, and getting to look at the TV appearances, I was able to see, okay, what she played was a certain type. So she was successful. She had a lot of work. But it's like anything in the TV business, in the film business, in regards to Hollywood. You know, the way the business runs in terms of TV shows and movies is cyclical. things come and they have a cycle.
Mm-hmm.
It's birth and then death. And sometimes it's rebirth and then death again.
Mm-hmm.
But it's cyclical.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem with being an actor or actress is if you get typecast because you're a certain type, then that becomes a problem in the hiring process, because directors, producers can't see you as this person or in that role because you've been seen in this kind of role and that kind of role, and they would have to move against type when it's a lot easier to get somebody who isn't that type. And so what Carol Wayne was the pretty woman type, to use that as a archetype. She was the attractive blonde. She was the shapely lady. And she played those types. And so when you look at her career, as I was able to do a little yesterday, I realized, she was so identifiable as these types that it was no surprise that when things changed for her, she had hard times. And when I say things changed for her, what happened was, the Tonight Show work was steady at times. But in about 1980 or so, Johnny was fed up with doing a hour and a half show. And this wasn't unusual with Johnny, in that if he didn't like certain things, he'd either go on strike or tell the network, I'm not doing the show anymore. And the Tonight Show was a major cash cow for the NBC network.
Yeah.
Major. Because, for a number of years, they were a last place network. And they didn't have lots and lots of hits. And so the Tonight Show was steady. Yeah. It was a steady moneymaker for the NBC network. Yeah. And so he wanted the show reduced because he didn't want to work as much. And so go ahead.
I just want to interrupt for a second. Before we continue on, there is a book coming out, folks, about the Tonight Show and Johnny Carson. And I read, I didn't read, but I get those page 6, TMZ emails. And one thing that Johnny actually restricted Pee Wee Herman, of all people, from being on his show. When I read this, when I heard this, when I saw it, I was like, how can? But it was just surprising that that he was kind of one of the people that Johnny really didn't want on the show. And as after we talked about talking about Carol Wayne the last time, I actually went on YouTube, and there was a night that Bob Newhart hosted the show, guest hosted the show, and Don Rickles was on the show, and Johnny has this cigarette case in the front of the desk.
Oh, that's right.
And this is the episode. This was the shocking thing. Johnny comes back the next night. Doc Severinsen's sitting in for Ed McMahon at the time. And Johnny picks up his cigarette case and notices that it's broken. And so Doc Severinsen's like Mr. Tattletale and says, yeah, Don Rickles broke it last night. And so he's like, and he's filming across the whole. So Johnny goes into the CPO Sharkey set and literally rips him apart. It's funny.
That sounds familiar. I may have seen that.
Yes.
I think I saw that.
Yeah, it's actually on YouTube on this when I saw this. And
I think I saw that when I was a kid.
Yeah. So when he went in there, he crapped, but at the same time, Don Rickles was like, "Please keep me on your show." You know, he's like almost like, "Hell no," you know, because I mean, he wound up being still on there, of course. I don't know if he ever made up for that cigarette box, but he went off on it, and then I mean, he made his remarks about, "Oh, there's a black man on the show," and just to let you know, I am not being racist, folks, on that statement. This is what he actually kind of said on that clip on YouTube, but it was funny, and you know, like the guy was like, really, you know, the actor that was on there was like really cool about it, but yeah, that thought of, you know, who Johnny really was allowing on the show and not allowing on the show was really surprising in reference to it. But let's continue on. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yeah. So as I mentioned previously, what I was able to do when I was looking, because I wasn't paying attention to her career per se. And if anything, there was a focus I was looking at the credits and so forth on film, because I write a film newsletter or film newsletters. So the thing about Carol that I want to point out in regards to her career, so that people will have a kind of, and so that even I understood it, was fundamentally Carol was not a star. She wasn't really a TV star because she was basically just a player on a well-known show.
Right.
She was part of a sketch.
Right.
And yes, she became well-known because of that sketch. The problem was that it didn't increase anything beyond her profile. So in other words, she was known, but she was not known in regards to her career as an actress. She wasn't known for her roles outside of the role of the matinee lady. It doesn't even have a name. It's just the matinee lady.
Right.
So you have to keep that in mind. What Carol was fundamentally a journeywoman actress, as I would call it, a jobbing actor who got a little lucky in terms of being able to become famous. She was relatively famous.
Yeah.
But she wasn't really a movie star, and she wasn't a TV star. Yeah. So when I look back on her career, it didn't translate.
Right.
Like, it didn't lead to better roles because, again, what did I mention earlier? She was playing types.
Yeah.
She was playing shapely lady, attractive blonde. She was playing the pretty woman. And what I noticed about the appearances was the fact that she was on shows of the era, like Bewitched, and I Dream of Jeannie, and Action Adventure. So those comedies and action adventure. So I would call them fantastic type of comedy, like unreal type comedy. And also that she was on shows like I Man from U.N.C.L.E. and I Spy, some action adventure shows. So it was certain kind of comedies, certain and 1 hour dramas. But like I said, everything is in cycles. And so her kind of high-voiced, very statuesque, very fantastic figure sort of type was eventually going to be not entirely phased out, but she wasn't going to be able to play those roles forever. And I think, at least from what I've heard in interviews, she wanted media roles and other types of roles. She kind of got it with, to a certain extent, with Heartbreaker, the film Heartbreaker, 1984. That was probably her best role in anything. Because she was starting to go back in the 70s. She was going to go back to movies.
Yeah.
You know, she had a small role in Scavenger Hunt. She was in a movie called Surf 2. Again, nothing spectacular, but I'm contextualizing her career. So what happened was, as I mentioned before, What happens is that the Tonight Show gets cut down to about an hour instead of an hour and a half. And one of the aspects that got cut during the material was the Art Fern Tea Time sketches. So that meant she was at work, at least for that show.
Yeah.
Then things start to, then you also have stuff going on in her life. She was married 3 times and she started getting into drugs. So it eventually got to a point, I believe she was addicted to cocaine at one point because I think she went to rehab. It got to a point where by 1984, she is filing for bankruptcy. And from what I understand, I believe on the form and what she had brought out with that she had 0 income at the time. That's what it was reported. Whether that's entirely accurate, I don't know, but that's what was supposedly reported. So also in that same year, she posed for Playboy. In 1984, she posed for Playboy, probably to generate some cash.
Yeah.
So she did a pictorial for Playboy.
Okay.
And that gets us to the actual, what eventually was her death. So in January 1985, she flies out to Manzanillo, Mexico.
Okay.
And she flies out with a guy called Edward Durston.
Okay.
Now,
well, I'm going to hold you there.
This guy?
Yeah, I'm going to hold you right there a minute. Just to, for those listening on WPPM-LP and on Philly TV, our guest is Albert Lanier, and we're talking about Carol Wayne. And so now we're going to get to the mysterious death of Carol Wayne that happened in January 1985. So, Albert, please continue. I had to put that in there, just to...
Sure. No problem. So, as you mentioned, mysterious death in January 1985. So in January, she flies off to Mexico with a guy called Edward Durston. They go to Manzanillo. Now, why do I mention this guy, Edward Durston? Because Edward Durston was a friend or companion to Diane Linkletter, who was the daughter of TV personality Art Linkletter. Now, the strange thing
about our Jeopardy guy.
Sorry?
Our Jeopardy guy.
No, that would be Art Fleming, I think.
Oh, it was Art Fleming. Oh, all right. Art
Linkletter was a TV personality. He had shows and so forth.
Yeah.
So...
Sorry about that, folks.
So what happened was that Diane Linkletter had jumped off of her apartment, from her apartment. She jumped out of her apartment building. I think it was 6 floors, if I recall correctly.
Wow.
But, yeah. She jumped to her death. Durston was supposedly the only person there the night that she jumped. And from what I understand, I guess he told cops he tried to hang on to her. He tried to I don't know, to latch on to her, but failed. Now, why is this important? Because Durston was with Carol Wayne in Manzanillo, Mexico, when she died. Now, and so the fact that this individual, Durston, was a used car salesman, or a car salesman. I don't know if it was used cars, but he was a car salesman.
Okay.
And he was a figure about town in LA. If you use the language figure about town, whatever.
Yeah.
But he was a guy, so they were together. Now, I have to be really honest. I don't know what their relationship is. That seems a bit murky.
Yeah.
I don't know if they were romantically involved. I don't know if they were friends. I'm not sure. I haven't seen anything come out that defined the nature of their relationship. I will say this. What I had heard over the years was that Carol Wayne, and again, I just want to say it's a matter of hearing and not of absolute confirmation. Because I don't have any sources that have told me absolutely that this is the case or contacted me. But what I had heard or understood or what I had heard basically, was that Carol Wayne was working as an escort. That's what I had heard.
Okay.
Which would make sense because, as I mentioned previously, she had filed for bankruptcy.
Yeah.
Back in 1984. And so I raised that because the nature of her relationship, if she had one, we don't know. At least I don't know. And what I've seen of whether it's reading about this or anything else, has it specified this or noted whether this, the extent of it, because they seem not to know. But we don't know what the nature of their relationship was, if they had one. So I cite that because if she was at a point where she was, involved in that certain line of work, that may shed some light on why both of them were there. They were, both Carol and this Edward Durston were staying at a place called the La Jotta's Resort, upscale, upmarket resort. And apparently they had a very good time. They had a very good time there, from what I understand. Now, what happened was they had been there, I think, at least a week. I think it was at least a week. And they were supposed to have left, I think it was January 10th. So they were supposed to have left, I believe, on the 10th, January 10th.
Right.
And for whatever reason, again, this is another area where the details, at least from what I saw and read or so forth, are unclear, murky. They missed the flight back to Los Angeles.
Okay.
So now they've checked out of this La Jotta's Resort.
Right.
They missed their flight. They wanted to check back, which didn't work out because I guess the resort was, apparently the resort was booked. And also because they had stayed there, and, they were supposed to have gone back home. Yeah. But they were helped with getting another hotel. And this hotel was the Hotel Playa de Santiago. Okay. Which is not an upscale hotel. It's down. Right. It's a down market type of hotel. Downscale, right. Down market type of hotel. The scuttlebutt at the time. So the reporting at the time.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying. So this place was kind of like a Motel 6, in a way.
Maybe a slight addition. I saw very little. I was watching a TV segment on her death, Carol Wayne's death. Yeah. And I think they showed the signage. Yeah. I didn't get to see much of the hotel. Yeah. Yeah, maybe a slight, step up from that. Okay. Yeah. But in any event, whether it was a slight step up or not, Carol was reportedly furious. And she was unhappy. The scuttlebutt, the reporting that's come out and what has emerged was supposedly she was upset with this, fall from grace, right, in terms of hotels or less one. Why she was, I don't know. Again, I don't know. All I know is that reportedly she didn't even want to enter the room, reportedly. Wow. She was that mad. And what happened was that she went off. Now, Durston himself says he was waiting around for her. I think in the hotel bar or elsewhere in the hotel. And she didn't come back. Now, here's, again, I cite Durston because he's part of the very suspicious nature of this case. Yeah. Durston goes and checks into another hotel. So he goes and checks into another hotel. And what happens is he then goes back to the Hotel Playa de Santiago. Okay. Gets his luggage and gets Carol's luggage. Right. And goes to the airport. He leaves Carol's luggage at the airport with a note. and then he flies back to Los Angeles.
Okay.
Now, this is one of the things that I note in my article that's very sketchy.
Okay.
Number one, why would you need to go and take somebody else's luggage to the airport? You can't do that now, I don't think.
Right.
For obvious reasons.
Right.
But I noted in my article that this seemed like a screw you type of move. And again, what I understand and what's been reported is Carol was upset. They obviously had maybe a fight or two, argument or two, something along that line. Again, the confirmation is not crystal clear here. But obviously he wasn't happy with her, because that seemed to me like a real middle finger move. Like I've never heard of anybody staying with anyone, male, female, whatever, in a hotel that would take their luggage and bring it with them to the airport. That doesn't strike me as something that you would need to do.
Yeah.
All he needed to do is just take his stuff and go to the airport.
Yeah, that kind of makes it suspicious right there in reference to that. You know, and in reference to, now these days, in reference to, like you said, you can't do that now because of CSA now, in reference to that. But continue on. I'm sorry.
Oh, no. That's perfectly fine. No. So that's what he does. Now, Carol ends up being discovered in a bay in Manzanillo by a fisherman. I believe it was probably, I think it was January 13th or so. But she was discovered in a bay. Carol was reportedly in 4 feet of water. And it's generally shallow water, right? She wasn't out at sea. She wasn't like in middle of the ocean or middle of the bay. She was in pretty shallow water. And she was also clothed.
Okay.
No swimsuit. She wasn't nude.
Right.
Fully clothed, found in 4 feet of water. Now, why do I note all this?
Yeah.
I note it because Carol Wayne, again, reportedly was someone who didn't like water very much.
Right.
She didn't want to go anywhere. I mean, she was someone, from my research, didn't take baths. She didn't want to ever take a bath. She consented, I think, to taking showers, from what I understand.
Right.
She wouldn't go anywhere near a bath or water like that. So, thus, the fact that she was found in 4 feet of water, 4 feet, again, she's not way out in the middle of the bay, way out in the middle of the ocean.
Right.
She's in 4 feet of water.
Okay.
She's clothed. And so when they did the autopsy, the tox report, or tox screenings, and did toxicology, or ran toxicology on her. No alcohol, I think at the time, no drugs or drug-like substances in the body. So she was apparently clean. Another thing worth noting was there were no bruises or scratches or scrapes or anything like that on her body. So no marks. So there's reportedly no marks or contusions or bruising. There is no alcohol or substances in her body.
Okay.
And so, and when you add all this up, again, something doesn't make sense here, right? I believe that there was a consular official. I think his full name was William Lecoq.
Okay.
And he had looked into it. And it was very clear, because he'd been interviewed on a TV show.
Yeah.
And he had stated that he didn't think it was an act, that he didn't. It was very clear he thought something else was going on, that it wasn't an accident. I think it was ruled by Mexican authorities as an accident.
Okay.
It was ruled as accidental.
Right.
But I don't, and I state this in my article, I don't believe it was accidental at all. I believe it was meant to look like an accident.
Right.
I believe that Carol Wayne was murdered.
Okay.
Very clear to me. But that's my position based on, and I state this bluntly. I don't want to say bluntly. I state this blatantly in my article that I believe Carol Wayne was murdered.
Okay. But it would be weird if they did the toxicology and they did a report in reference to it. I mean, if she was murdered, and this is what questions me now in reference to it. If she was murdered, you would have seen blood on her clothes.
Well, there wasn't a weapon used. Again, it's not like, you have to understand there are no scrapes, there's no scars, there's no bruising.
Right, that's what I'm saying,
Obviously, there was no edge weapon like a knife used. Right. There apparently wasn't a gun used, right? Nobody shot her.
Right.
So there's no weapon that was used.
Yeah.
And no marks or bruises, abrasions, so forth.
Right.
And again, a homicide doesn't need to be just using a weapon.
Right.
I would just state that.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to analyze true crime cases at times.
Yeah.
For a brief time. And I don't anymore, but I know from analyzing true crime cases that you don't need a gun and you don't need a knife to commit a murder.
Right.
There are other ways to commit a homicide.
Right. It's just surprising that, in reference to this and, her being found in 4 feet of water, I mean, no marks on her, no bullet wound, no bullets or no. I mean, the only thing I could think, I could possibly think that could happen, was that, she probably met someone and probably was, but even if she kind of like was pushed off a building, there would have been something on her to show,
Well, what I would say is this. Like I stated in my article, I believe she was murdered.
Yeah.
What the reasons for that were, I don't know.
Right.
Was it a crime of opportunity? Perhaps. I can't go into details because there are no details. It would be simply getting into the realm of speculation. And you can speculate all day, but unless there's serious evidence of it, I see no reason to do that. Right. It's very clear to me it was a homicide. And it's evident that the consular official thought this was no pure accident.
Right.
They didn't buy it.
Right.
If you look at where she was, again, this is a woman that wanted absolutely nothing to do with the water for the most part. Right. She didn't take baths. She took showers, I guess, as a way of cleaning herself. Right. That's my understanding. She didn't want to ever get in a bath. She didn't swim. From what I understand, from what I hear, she didn't swim. She was largely afraid of the water. Right. So the fact that she was killed, I will say she was killed.
Yeah.
The fact she was found in water.
Right.
Says to me that this says to me that somebody probably, I mean, this is again speculation.
Yeah, of course.
If she was killed, if she was murdered, that they didn't probably know. They either didn't know about her aquaphobia. I don't know if that's an actual term for it, but I'll just say aquaphobia.
Okay.
They either didn't know or they did know and that was deliberate.
Yeah.
It was another screw you.
Yeah.
but it was evident to me that this was made to look like an accident.
Yeah.
There's no question. Well, again, she's found in water. She's completely clothed.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, there are things that don't add up. And again, Ed Durston to me was someone who knew more than he obviously let on.
Right.
Very clear to me he did. And his actions are very suspicious.
Yeah.
Not just the suitcase, but the fact that he checked into another hotel.
Yeah.
After he went off, and go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, it would look like in our times now, in 2026, if this was brought out like what happened with Matthew Perry and the drugs.
Oh, yes.
If this kind of feels like this was going on behind the scenes, even though like you said in the autopsy, she was clothed, no alcohol, no drugs, found in 4 feet of water. It's kind of like something that could be like what happened to Matthew Perry, if you think about it.
Yeah, I've heard a little about the Matthew Perry case, and that the belief by some was that Matthew Perry that it wasn't accidental.
Yeah.
That it might have been homicide.
Yeah.
I don't know enough to speak confidently on that death.
Oh,
Matthew.
They did charge the doctor. Oh, they went at everybody that was with him, and most of them got charged. I think the doctor himself is serving prison time now for it. Yeah,
that reminds me a little of that whole Michael Jackson case.
Yeah.
With his death.
Yeah.
It's a little different because that was dealing with propofol, which is a anesthetic drug.
Right. Right.
Surgery. And Jackson was taking that in his home.
Right.
Which is insane to me.
Yeah.
Like he had problems sleeping and he was taking a anesthetic drug to sleep.
Right. Yeah.
Crazy. But getting back to Carol's death.
Yes.
Again, I think Ed Durston is one of the keys to this. Or was one of the keys to this. I think the Mexican authorities didn't get to speak to him. I believe everyone down there, meaning Manzanillo, in Mexico, including the consular official, U.S. consular official, I think they knew this was no accident.
Right.
I think they knew, certainly it was not self-deletion. They knew it was a homicide. But what could they do?
Yeah.
I mean, the accident is a logical place to go, even though it's very clear to me that there was no accident here.
Right.
Based on what I know of Carol, it's no accident.
Okay. We have a few more minutes out. So, and I thank you for sharing that about Carol Wayne. It really brings up more questions that, that could, like I said, could lead it to a 2025, what would happen with Michael Jackson and Matthew Perry and all that. If they were actually in reference to brought back to maybe even going back over into Carol Wayne's death and stuff. So I mean, this could be something that could be very interesting and that could be probably picked up. Who knows? May not be now, but maybe a couple of years later. So I put up on the screen where you can reach out in reference to Substack. Did I do that right, by the way?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. Albert.com. That is. Yes.
Okay.
That's for Vital. Correct. That's where you find not only my article Suspicious Case of Carol Wayne, which came out in May of 2025. But also you can find my podcast episode 16, The Suspicious Case of Carol Wayne as well. So you could go to check out either or check out one or the other at allanier.substack.com.
Okay. And so one last question. We have, like I said, a couple minutes. What's next?
For me?
Yeah. What's coming up?
What's coming up for me? Well, basically, I have to round out my season for Final Cut.
Okay.
Which is the podcast. So I'm on the 3rd season of Final Cut. So I have to finish that up. So I'm supposed to be on sabbatical from my newsletters, but I've been writing material for them.
Yeah.
So I'm finally trying to get away from the newsletter, and this year just focus on my podcast. So finish up the 3rd season of Final Cut, the podcast. I have a few episodes left, and then go to the Write-Off, which is a podcast I have about writing. So I'm going to go and do episodes of that. So the focus thus far, it's the only plans I have for this year, have been my podcast, Final Cut, and the Write-Off, both of which you can find on Spotify and Substack.
All right.
And those are the plans. So basically focus on those podcasts.
Okay. All right. So, Albert, thank you as always for coming on.
Thank you.
Definitely sharing your research about Carol Wayne. Like I said, yes, this was my suggestion in reference to it because, remembering about Carol Wayne and, being on the Tonight Show and stuff. And when he mentioned it to me, I was like, wow. I said, yeah, let's do this, let's bring this out. And it made, as we were, being that this was as mysterious, it reminded me of Bob Crane too, and his mysterious death back then.
Bob Crane. Oh yeah.
Yeah.
So that was the first. Yeah, that was the first true crime case I analyzed. Was the death of Bob Crane. Yeah. So I was interviewed about him on a couple of shows several years ago. Yeah, when I was doing true crime.
Yeah. So make me think of that. And then, realizing about Carol Wayne, I was like, oh, yeah, I got to learn, I got to find this out. Maybe there's more to it that I will maybe need to learn. So that's why I had Albert come on and we talked about that. So, Albert, you're welcome to come back on this anytime. Hopefully, excuse me. Hopefully, the viewers of PhillyCAM TV and the listeners on WPPM-LP will have enjoyed hearing this. Especially, those that are up there in our age that remember Carol Wayne. Hopefully they, got to learn something new in reference to it. So, but definitely thank you so much for coming on. Come back on anytime. Everybody else, thank you so much for watching us on YouTube, on WPPM, or listening to us on WPPM-LP, and coming soon, possibly in June, to PhillyCAM TV, and hopefully in the future listening to us in other places. So thank you so much for watching the Life with Joey Calvo podcast. God bless you all.